stay, things got tough. I told a lie, she got mad. She wasn't there when things got bad. I never ever saw the northern lights. Never really heard a cluster of flies. Never ever saw the stars so bright. And in the farmhouse it would be alright, 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 alright. Woke this morning to the stinging lash. Every man has found the lash. Each betrayal begins with trust. Every man returns to dust. Don't ever saw the northern lights. Never really heard a cluster of flies. Never ever saw the stars so bright. In the farmhouse to be alright, 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 alright.
You know, a song can really, actually take you somewhere. Love music. All right. Summer Moon Utah Wells was reported missing June 15th, 2021, around 6:30 p.m. when her father called in and advised that her mother had went for a walk or a run, and when she came back, she couldn't find Summer, and she'd been looking for her for about 10 minutes, but she couldn't find her. So she supposedly called Dawn, and Dawn called 911. Candus says she also called 911. We haven't heard the 911 calls, but those would be interesting to hear. Summer Wells' father, Don Wells, was on WJHL News on June 15th, 2023, which was 2 years since Summer went missing. 2 years ago, Summer was reported as 3 feet tall and 40 pounds. So she was probably closer to 4 feet tall at that point in time. She might have been 40 pounds. That's really light. My 2-year-old's nearly 40 pounds. And I mean, he's on the bigger side, but he's not huge. I mean, he's normal. He looks normal. He's just on the bigger side. But I mean, he's nearly 40 pounds and he's only 2. Summer was said to be 40 pounds. I don't know. She was pretty thin, but by now she would likely be bigger than that. We've all seen her age progression photo. And actually don't have that handy right off the top of my head here, or I would show it really quick, but she was also initially reported as 4 years old, but she was 5. Her birthday is February 4th, 2016, which makes her 7 now. She has blonde hair. Her head was shaved at the time of her disappearance, and it was also known to be dyed pink and blue and to be shaved more than once. All the children had their heads shaved at some point on different occasions. So Dawn Wells being on the news for Summer's 2 years missing mark. He didn't really say anything new, but he was kind of put on the spot a little bit, which I liked that. This picture of Summer, she's actually with Robin in this picture, and they're at the park and they're just hanging out, I guess. I'm not really sure if it was for Easter. I think it might have been actually. But yeah, that was Summer, not too long before she was reported missing, but before her head was shaved. And you can see her beautiful blue eyes. You can see the decay on her teeth. You can see that her skin wasn't in the best condition because her face was always so dirty. She probably didn't get her teeth brushed a whole lot. It's just kind of sad to think about, but it gives you a little bit of insight into what her life was probably like. So Dawn says, I'm just having to put my faith completely into God and know that He has a better plan, and that's pretty much where I'm at. My wife is still struggling. It really strikes me as odd that Don doesn't say they're both still struggling. Why would he himself not be struggling too? And why is he making it a point to say that Candus is struggling? You'd think he would make it a point to say that they're both struggling, but he doesn't. He just says more than once that Candus is still struggling. Well, yeah, it's only been 2 years. That's really not that long. Even though Candus said she needed to put Summer to the side not long after Summer went missing. Social media have come out, and protested at my job, Don says, everywhere we go. And so it's hard for us to get any work or anything in Eastern Tennessee. That could be in part due to your lack of etiquette of any kind, or any empathy or sympathy, or lack of caring at all for anyone or anything, raging and lashing out on live streams on public platforms involving your missing daughter, Summer, and the way you act all on your own. Maybe these people that could potentially be hiring you see the way you're acting publicly, and they make their judgments based on things like that, because that's just the smart thing to do on a business level. Hitting your wife, or trigger warning, sorry, this isn't going to be pretty, and I probably should say this ahead of time. I'm just going to throw a trigger warning out there for this, because there's going to be things brought up that are going to probably be triggering for some people. And if you have to tune out at any point, like I always say, I completely understand. But hitting your wife, or what seemed to be Don hitting Candus on a live stream after he thought the live stream was over. He thought he ended it, but it didn't actually end yet. But he was acting a fool nonetheless while he was live still, and while he knew he was live. And he does things like playing pranks in Summer's name, and even on his own family members that are victims of his from his past. And the treatment they've been given by Candus, egging Don on when he's talking so horrendously about his stepsisters, says a lot about Candus too. People make judgments based on things they have said and done themselves, live for everyone to see on a public platform. They did that all on their own. There's a picture of the terrain surrounding Summer's home from the aerial view from the WVLT, from a news clip. I thought that was a good shot of the area just directly surrounding her home, just to show the depth of it, There's Summer on her swing. I feel like she was just so happy there. Don says he and Candus have been in Arkansas on and off for the past few months, where he's been working construction. He says they've been working with CPS there to get their boys back. They've been in CPS custody since a month after Summer was reported missing. Don says he thinks they're scared of their house because of what happened to Summer, so we would like to buy another house here in Arkansas, he says. Now, he doesn't actually say that he thinks they're scared of the house because of what happened to Summer. He says he thinks they're scared of the house because of what happened, but I'm assuming he means because of what happened with Summer going missing and whatever they might have seen, witnessed, or whatever they may know that is probably traumatizing to them. We couldn't understand what happened to Summer. The police couldn't understand, and they were questioning us. Sometimes they were hard on us, other times they weren't. It just depended on what police agency was there at the time, Don said. So Don's talking about probably, for some reason, he doesn't like Hawkins County. Remember when he said he would do a polygraph for TBI, but he wasn't going to do one for Hawkins County? And he's said before that he doesn't trust them. I don't know. He's referenced to that he doesn't trust them. But then he also says things like he would go hang out with them. So it's hard to tell with him. We try to bounce things off of each other all the time. We might have talks about some of the drug activity that was going on at the time when Summer went missing, and that was going on after her disappearance for quite a while. But yeah, there's nothing new. Okay. So is Don saying he and law enforcement would bounce ideas off of each other about what could have happened to Summer? And the drug thing was discussed quite a bit, I take it, from for him to point that topic out specifically. That's interesting. I wonder how well Don and Fred knew each other, just on a kind of side note. And I wonder if Candus went by or to Fred's house when she went all the way back in the holler looking for Summer. And I'm not just thinking this because, oh, Fred just got arrested and now I'm suspicious of him. No, it's not that. It's just something that I've actually wondered about, like, for a long time. I wonder if the junk that Fred was manufacturing and maintaining a dwelling for was in part supplied to Don and Candus, or, maybe even some other people in and around the holler. Could that have anything to do with why Summer is missing? I don't know. It's possible. A lot of people speculate that it could, not necessarily that it could have been something that came from Fred, but a lot of people do speculate that Summer could potentially be missing due to drugs. Maybe that's why Fred's interview with Ziggy seemed so out there at times. Some of the things he said, like he was purposely trying to get people to look another direction besides at him, especially considering Ziggy straight up told them that she was suspicious that something might have happened to Summer to cause her to go missing because of drugs. And he would say things that were just straight up lies, like that the church shut down because of Summer's case by the TBI when it didn't. Then he supposedly wired up on Don, but did he really do that? He probably did if he said he did, but we don't know. He also said things about Rose that I just don't see how they could be true. Rose Bly, he said that she was up there on the hill, doing illegal activities, making money illegally up there on the hill, which I don't believe that was true, because she went missing in 2009 from St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, and he's talking about a time that would have been more present than that, like more recent than that, since she's went missing. So I don't know, it's kind of hard to believe, but that's what he says. He sounds pretty sure of it. But maybe he was trying to do the police a favor when he wired up on Don. Maybe he was trying to do him a solid, hoping it would reflect well on him if anything was found out about what he had going on with all his crap that he got in trouble for. Who knows? I'm not attacking Fred Hill. I don't think he took Summer, but there could be an outlying connection. It's possible, like he might be the supplier of things that caused Summer to be missing. I don't know. Don went over to Fred's allegedly that very night that Summer went missing. Candus drove all the way back in the holler. He says he saw them around there around 3 and 4 in that time frame on June 15th. So why would there be so much activity around his residence that he couldn't explain? on June 15th. Why would Don come to Fred's house first thing after Summer goes missing within a few hours? It's just weird to me because Fred acts like they didn't know each other well and they just lived near each other. That was all. But it seems like it was more than that. Like he's leaving something out. It just seems like he's leaving something out. Why not just say if you were friends? Unless it was something else and it was illegal or nefarious, like drug related, then I could see why he would be kind of weird about it and why he wouldn't just say, well, they were just friends. They just hung out because he didn't want to claim Don as a friend like that. Don says they stay in touch with Ellie through their PIs. He says about 2 months ago, Ellie talked to his PIs, the FBI did, and they shared what they could with us, but they was just trying to come up with any new information or leads that they possibly could, and so far we just haven't been able to come up with anything. Here in this part, Don makes it sound like he is working like personally with the police in Summer's investigation, like they have this great rapport with Don, which makes it come off in a way like the police are on Don's side, like they don't think he's guilty, but I don't think that's really how it's been going down. That's just a hunch. A very narcissistic trait of Don, in my opinion, that I have noticed many times throughout the past 2 years when he says things like that. Don says Candus has been burnt by so many people that want to supposedly interview her or help and basically turn on her in every imaginable way. She's been hurt deeply by these kind of things, plus the thought of we lost our daughter and our boys are in CPS custody. Well, Don says they haven't been able to talk to their boys. Well, Don says at first we were allowed to talk to them, but we haven't been able to talk to them for about 6 months. No contact or anything like that, and that's all we want to be able to do is tell them that we love them and that we're rooting for them and we're working on things to get them back. So, what are Don and Candus working on to get the boys back? It seems they have shot down every opportunity they have had at getting their boys back. And they're just throwing caution to the wind with their whole CPS case, like whatever happens, happens. Did they expect a better outcome? I don't see why they would. I think they're smarter than that, and they know if they didn't follow through with their case plan that they weren't going to get their kids back. Yet they seem to want sympathy for losing their children and even go to the extent to say that they were kidnapped. So with what is going on with Summer, that is an extremely distasteful and disgusting thing to say in general, regardless. But Don says lots of things like that. Don says he is relying on God. He says whatever the outcome is, he has hope in God. He says one day, either sooner or later, he will be with us, with his daughter again. So Don just accepts that Summer is gone and he wants to move on with his life, it seems like. He says Candus is the one that's struggling. And he just seems to just accept that she's gone. I mean, that's pretty worrying. It bothers me a lot. Ansley Daniels says she reached out to the TBI, the FBI, Hawkins County, and the PIs for an interview, and all of them declined to speak to her. She did, however, get some questions answered by the TBI. They are still receiving leads, but there are very few. Most of those tips are theories or speculation that's been circulating on social media. TBI said as long as agents and detectives have leads to follow, the case will not be classified as cold. So this is keeping people invested in Summer's case too, because what if they can get Don or Candus to say something that will help find Summer? I mean, we got to take any chance we can get. There has to be a chance of that. People can't give up on that either. As long as they're here and not willing to go away, then keep asking the questions and trying to get the answers. Keep pressure on law enforcement by keeping it as big in the public eye as you can, as we all can. There's a local, Lori Britt, She lives about 3 miles away from the Wells family home. She was on the news. They don't know the Wells personally, but she says this case has changed the community. Some are going missing. She thinks it's really worried a lot of people. Nobody wants to lose their child to something of this nature. She says there's not a lot of traffic out this way, but there's been more recently, and there's been a lot of people coming together and looking for her in the community. All right. I'm going to play the news clip. It's on WJHL, and I believe it was published on June 15th. As soon as this loads here. Take it to the spot. All right. TBI answers questions on 2-year anniversary of Summer Wells' disappearance on WJHL, and it was streamed June 15th, 2023. All right. Oops.
But with something really
did say that this case has changed her small community.
I think it's really worried a lot of people. But with something like this happening, nobody wants to lose their child.
That's in part too why a lot of people want some answers from the TBI is answers from anybody really, Hawkins County, FBI, TBI, any of them. If they could give us a little bit of information about what direction it's heading, as in foul play, or if they could clear some people, then maybe some people could have a better idea of what they're looking at in their community as far as who to trust or not, because that's a big deal to people, especially in a community where you have so much land and there's so much land in between people, and there's fewer people and each other a little bit better, and they've all lived there for so long. It's good to know what's going on if there's some horrendous people living in your area that you want to know about. If they have things on somebody that they could at least tell us they're leaning it towards foul play, then at least we would know to have our guard up a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that's how a lot of people are thinking. I've heard a lot of people saying that. And I understand that. I totally understand that.
To something of this nature. We're not used to a lot of traffic out this way, but I guess it's just the traffic's picked up. It's people have been closer, looking after each other, looking out for her.
Yeah, in a way, it has brought the community together, which is one positive way to look at this, but it's just sad that that's what it took to bring some people together. But Summer has brought a lot of people together, and that's one positive thing that we can at least look at, that Summer's done good for the world. She's brought a lot of people together, and she's created a lot of friendships and a lot of positivity, but for a very negative reason. There's always that bad side to everything, but try to be positive when I can. Ansley says she also spoke to several neighbors off camera who say there has been a lot of action from YouTubers and crime junkies who were interested in the case. Leslie said she also noticed a lot more no trespassing signs than she did before. All right. See it. Yeah, there we go. Now you should be able to see this and hear this.
I have hope in God. He's in control of all things. And so, whatever the outcome is, I have hope in God. And one day, either sooner or later, I will be with my daughter again.
And tell me that doesn't sound like he's just accepting that she's gone, like, because he knows that if Summer's found that she's not going to be returned to him and Candus, that's not going to happen. This is still that same video. TBI answers questions on 2-year anniversary of Summerwell's disappearance from June 15th, 2023 on WJHL. Same video. Don Wells. Oh, hold on. Let me turn this back on. So Don Wells also appeared for an interview with WVLT for his missing daughter, Summer's 2-year missing mark. All right. Now, he's got his headphones on there, and the news has him on the phone, and they're doing it over the phone like that. So, okay, she was pretty good at asking him some questions here. It says, this is what is said in a news clip from WVLT, okay? Don says their home used to be really pretty awesome. He used to look forward to coming home to the kids. He works all the time, but he always loved to come home. Interesting, right? Don says, when I got home and there was a couple police cars there, so we was really scared to death, and we was just hoping for the first few days that she would be found. TBI activated the Amber Alert June 16th of 2021. 19 agencies and hundreds of volunteers were called into search for nearly 2 weeks. I believe it was 13 days. Here's a picture of one of the rescue vehicles. My goodness. From the day she went missing. Crazy. I believe that was from the day that footage was. I guess I'm just assuming it might have been from the next day or something, but yeah. Says, where is Summer Wells, Hawkins County girl missing for 2 years? It's sad to like look at the search dog going. Like they had all the search dogs going. He's going down the road trying to find Summer, tracking her scent. All right. Saturday, June 26th, many thought there was a possible break in the case when law enforcement announced that they were looking for the driver of a late 90s to early 2000s model red or maroon Toyota Tacoma with white buckets in the back and a full bed leather rack, which they're still looking for, in the area of Ben Hill Road and Beech Creek Road on either the late afternoon or early evening of June 14th or 15th, 2021. The driver of that truck has not been identified. And this is what the truck's supposed to be depicted as right here. Definitely not the one on findsummerwells.com. This one's totally different looking. Don says he thinks that this is some kind of professional situation that took Summer and was probably watching for a while. You don't think somebody like Jody Sue or anybody in the holler like Fred that's always in and out doing his thing, any of the people that were out in the woods that you had staying there on the property, all these people that the law talked to, you don't think any of those people would have noticed someone staking out your property and your kids? Is that why you threw that in there, that you had to call Candus and say, make sure Hunter heard you say that there was somebody on the property trying to touch the little kids? I mean, wow. If that was really the case, why didn't you just rush straight home? I know you guys say that Hunter saying this isn't true, but I just don't see why he would make something like that up. I mean, that's pretty wild. Makes me wonder. So Don says Summer's obviously not in school anywhere, and there's no record of her anywhere. So she's either in someone's basement, or she's deceased, or we just don't know, or in another country, or it's fairly easy to get anything out of this country, in my opinion, Don says. It's not easy to get into the country, but it sure is easy to get out of the country, he says. Now all of these things that he just said about her obviously not being in school anywhere, there being no record of her anywhere, she's either in someone's basement, or she's deceased, or we just don't know, or her being in another country. It's like I doubt these are all things that law enforcement said, okay, well, she's obviously not in school anywhere and there hasn't been any record of her anywhere. I mean, maybe they have, but it more sounds to me like these are things Don's thought of that people were gonna be asking him, and that he wanted to make sure he got out there for everybody to hear, because he knows these are things that people are thinking of, and he's got to have a reason for. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, I know obviously she's not in school anywhere because people are going to be wondering about her being in school. They're going to ask about that. They're going to want to find proof of life for her, or people are going to be wondering where she could possibly be. People are going to be asking questions like that. So it's like his way of addressing it ahead of time. Does that make sense? I don't know. It just seems like something that he already pre-thought about before, but I could be overthinking it. Don says he has no idea if Summer is still alive. He says, if she is, I don't know. I really don't know. There's no way of telling, he says. I'm saying, if this is something he's already thought about, though, it's like it's not coming from his heart kind of thing. And I feel like when he's on the news talking about his missing daughter at her 2-year missing mark, it would be more like more kind of emotional and from the heart and real, not something like he was paranoid about people asking him about. So he had to like get it out there to try and make himself look good. Does that make sense? So numerous search warrants, cell phone data analyzed, and other evidence collected, and still no Summer. Don claims to have spent hundreds of sleepless nights not knowing where Summer is. So WVLT asked him. They said, do you know what happened to Summer? Hold on. So I loved that when WVLT was like, so I asked him, and she says, do you know what happened to Summer? And Don's like, I don't know how you answer a question like that. I mean, I've had that question asked to me before. I mean, if I asked you that question, how would you answer? Watch. We'll watch. I'll show you.
Stop there.
And she's obviously not in school anywhere, or there's no record of her anywhere. So she's either, in someone's basement, or she's deceased, or we just don't know, or in another country. I think it's fairly easy to get anything out of the country, in my opinion. It's not easy to get into the country, but it sure is easy to get out of the country.
2 years later.
Do you feel me about how it doesn't feel like it's something that's coming straight from his heart, like on the spot right now, something he's genuinely thinking about Summer? Like it seems more like something that's scripted that he pre-thought of about things that he thought people were going to ask him about or something. I don't know. It just didn't seem genuine. It didn't seem like it came from the heart.
Later, Wells says the only evidence he's aware of is that a police dog tracked Summer scent here to Ben Hill Road. He does believe somebody took her, but he doesn't know whether or not she's still alive.
Now, this is from, if you want to look at this yourself, this is on WVLT, and it is titled, Father Speaks 2 Years After the Disappearance of Summer Wells, WVLT News, and it was posted on June 15th, 2023. All right.
Do you believe Summer's still alive?
I have no idea. I have no clue. If she is, I really don't know.
Here to Ben Hill Road. He does believe somebody took her, but he doesn't know whether or not she's still alive. Do you believe Summer's still alive?
I have no idea. I have no clue. If she is, I really don't know. There's no way of telling.
There are still.
When he ends it with, there's no way of telling, I almost felt like at first he was going to start getting a little bit emotional, but then he's like, there's no way of telling. And I was like, I don't know. He just kind of seems more like nervous and awkward, which I get being nervous and awkward on the news. Totally get it. But I feel like he would be a little bit more emotional, but I don't know. He also seems emotionally numb already. And it's been 2 long years of not having any idea where, a small 5-year-old child, now 7-year-old, Summer Wells, is or has been this whole time. And, she could be anywhere in any type of situation. We have no idea. And you'd think he would still, though, after 2 years, even though it's been a long 2 years, it's only been 2 years. You shouldn't give up hope yet. And I feel like you would still be a lot more emotional than that. But I don't know. I've never had a missing child before, so I can't really speak on that. That's just how I feel. I feel like he's emotionally numb and he's blocking things out, and for whatever reason, I don't know.
Still very few clues, despite investigators working thousands of hours on this case. Numerous search warrants, cell phone data analyzed, and other evidence collected, and not one sign of Summer. Wells says he spent hundreds of sleepless nights wondering where his little girl is. So I asked him, do you know what happened to Summer?
I don't know how you answer a question like that. I've had that question asked to me before. If I asked you that question, how would you answer?
All right, let's listen to this one more time and just pay attention to his eyes and his. I know it's kind of hard to tell body language when you're just looking at somebody's face and shoulders, but it still can say a lot. And I guess if you know anything about body language, which a lot of people actually do know a lot about that, that does say a lot with your face and your shoulders. But just pay attention to his body language there.
Do you know what happened to Summer?
I don't know how you answer a question like that. I've had that question asked to me before. If I asked you that question, how would you answer?
The TV
I mean, if I asked you that question, how would you answer it?
It seems like it kind of peed him off. Like, it made him mad, I think, that she asked him that. And I think he kind of wanted to cuss her out and call her the N-word like he calls everybody because he's vile like that. And I think he couldn't because he knew he was on the news and he knew how terrible that would make him look if he did that on an actual news station. That's just how I feel. I could be totally wrong, but it just seems to me like it pissed him off. I also think it kind of caught him off guard a little bit too. He definitely tensed up. Okay, I hope I wasn't muted the whole time. Summerwell's Amber Alert is still active and her investigation is still active and ongoing. The TBI has questioned SOs in the area, neighbors, and Summer's parents, along with dozens of other people. Don said if Summer is still alive, which he just don't know, this is his message for her. Please just let her come home. Please just let her have her freedom and her life. Can you imagine the guilt Don must feel saying that if he has anything to do with her disappearance? It would probably be overwhelming, and there's nothing he can say to anybody about it. Like, if he is guilty of Summer's disappearance and he has to feel all this guilt, like, who would he talk to about it? He just has to hold it all in. Can you imagine how awful that would be? I hope he had nothing to do with Summer being missing, but my gut tells me that he knows something and he knows what happened and that he was probably there at some point during the day, maybe for a late lunch, maybe. And if he wasn't, I feel like he still knows what happened and why. That's just my gut instinct. I know that doesn't mean I'm right. Obviously, I know that. I would just be so amazed to find out that Don really doesn't know anything about what happened to Summer. That would just amaze me if he didn't know where she was. I'm gonna go back to this.
The TBI says Summer's Amber Alert is still active at the neighbors is alive.
Just let her come home. Let her have her freedom and her life. The only thing I can say is just please let her come home. Let her have her freedom and her life.
Wow. It's heavy. I mean, like, no matter what you think possibly could have happened to Summer, or whether you think her parents are guilty or not, or how guilty they are, or what they did, that's some heavy shit right there. Because think about it, like, how would it feel to be that person? I don't have any sympathy for whoever did anything to Summer at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, wow, can you imagine the level of guilt and how bad that would suck to have that on your conscience? And the way that somebody would act on the news if they did know what happened to Summer, I feel like is the way that Don and Candus act. Not just on the news, but on YouTube too. Yeah. So I wanted to go to, there was a WJHL on the prayer vigils. Here, I will type it in and find it really quick. Here it is. This was streamed June 15th, 2023. It's on WJHL and it's called Vigils Held to Mark 2 Years Since Summerwell's Disappearance.
Story in the public eye. Most days, Warriors Path State Park is full of people having fun outdoors. But Thursday night, the park became a gathering place for two separate vigils in honor of a missing little girl.
And I never imagined that 2 years later that we'd be here with no answers.
No.
It's sad because people in the community, not just people on YouTube, but people in the community where Summer's actually from, like, that have kids themselves, are just there just to support a family in a time of need when they probably have no idea what a lot of things that have gone on with Dawn and Candus on social media, and they still are here to offer all this support when Dawn and Candus aren't even there for Summer, their own daughter.
No answers, no suspects, no explanation about what happened to Summer Wells.
But it does become very, very frustrating, feeling like she's just out there lost and alone.
Many here said they want more transparency from law enforcement in Summer Wells' case.
We often hear that this is an active investigation, but to the public, it's we're active and what is happening on the law enforcement side.
No, I see what she's saying, and I'm glad there's a balance out there of people that, say things like this, and then there's people that are also out there saying just trust in law enforcement. I'm sure they've got to have more. They know way more than what we think we know. They actually have evidence, digital evidence, and whatever else they've collected. We know there's other things that they've collected too, and we've seen some of it. But there's nothing that we really know for sure. They know what they know, and it's been 2 years, and Ronnie Lawson's about to be making some kind of statement soon whenever he's ready to do that, and hopefully we can just pray that that will lead us closer to answers for Summer. And if it doesn't, and it still leaves us in this same state of mystery, having no clue what's going on, then we're still going to hold on to hope that Summer is alive out there somewhere, waiting to be rescued, and that she will be rescued and be able to tell her own story someday. I don't want to hear that they're headed in the direction of foul play or anything like that, because that obviously is a more devastating end to things when there's foul play involved. But at the same time, it would be nice to have that closure to know, like, what kind of direction we're headed.
Some here also pause to remember that Summer Wells is just one of many who've never come home.
If you look at the statistics and the data, it's really sad to see that the number of people that go missing every day.
But tonight,
They showed Rose Bly there for a minute. I wish they would have kept it on her face for a minute and, like, said, this is Summer's aunt. She went missing in 2009, said her name. That would have been nice. They could have took a second to do that.
wasn't about an investigation. It was about a little girl.
So we're going to show up and hold the space until, as long as we need to.
Till she's found, till she comes home.
Warrior
You should be able to see this and hear this now.
Summer was seen. Almost immediately, Summer's parents became the center of a police investigation.
Summer's parents, Candus and Dawn, had something to do with this, or have you ruled that out?
We haven't ruled anything out. Everything's possible.
Could she have gotten herself into a situation where she
Ruled anything out.
Dawn's parents became the center of a police investigation.
Summer's parents, Candus and Dawn, had something to do with this, or have you ruled that out?
We haven't ruled anything out.
Now, this is obviously, pretty sure this is footage from way back in like February, of 2022, I think. I could be wrong on that. I could actually be way off on that, but I'm pretty sure this is like, nothing new. This is just old footage that they're showing on their live stream for Summer's missing 2-year mark.
Everything's possible.
Could she have gotten herself into a situation where it wasn't her,
Yeah. Everything.
had something to do with this, or have you
I see there where it says November of 2021. Sorry, I didn't even notice that before.
ruled that out?
We haven't ruled anything out. Everything's possible.
Could she have gotten herself into a situation where it wasn't her fault, but
No,
you know what I mean?
no, she's a good mother. She loves her children. She's not going to allow any situation like that. The biggest mistake she might have made is maybe choosing some wrong friends, which is, it happens.
I'm not gonna lie, this part's always bothered me. I'll just say it because I feel like he's being disingenuous. He's trying too hard to think of something to say. He got caught off guard and he was like, oh, I don't know what to say. And he felt super awkward, and probably because it was a pretty legitimate question and he probably had to think of something to say, because he was like, dang, if I answer this honestly, it's going to sound real bad. You know what I'm saying?
Don Wells pleaded guilty to driving under the influence last year. Candus also filed an order of protection against him, but asked for it to be dismissed. He now faces criminal charges in 3 states, including a domestic assault arrest in 2020. 2 years later, investigators have not.
And don't forget when Candus filed that order of protection when she was in fear for Summer because she thought Dawn was going to hurt Summer and her brothers and Candus and her mom. And she filed a police report and got Donnie put up for a night. And then went and cried to the judge and said, no, I don't want him in there. I take it back, whatever I said. All right, well, obviously there was a problem. And the next day you decided to just sweep it under the rug for your own selfish reasons when you probably would. I just wanted to say it was not the next day. It was like a week later, I think. It wasn't just the next day. So correction on that. Sorry. And thank you for the Cash App, Nature Lover. Love you. Would still have Summer today if you wouldn't have. I mean, maybe that was too far. But I'm just saying, you know.
Not charged either Don or his wife in connection to Summer's disappearance.
Everybody makes mistakes, and we all have to learn and go on. We're doing better. It's still very rough for my wife.
Don Wells sat down with NewsNation to talk about where the case stands today. His wife hasn't sat down for an interview since this appearance on Dr. Phil in 2021, where she walked out of an interview in Texas.
Now, I remember when Candus walked out of this interview in Texas when she was on talking to the behavior panel and they were doing the whole Dr. Phil thing. She supposedly they got a tip where Summer was spotted in Georgia, even though they never talk about it and they didn't seem too devastated about it at all afterwards. Just that very moment, she decided to have an outburst. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. They say that's why. A lot of people say that's why that's why Candus had this outburst there, but I don't think that's true. And a lot of people also think it's because the cornbread mafia was mentioned, which maybe, but it seemed like it was building up before they said anything about that. And right when they said that, it was like, that was just so happened to be the point in time where she snapped and she was like, I couldn't take it anymore.
Oh, I'm being interrogated again, and I don't want to do this anymore. Yes, I am.
We'll stop. I want you to feel comfortable.
Since Summer's disappearance, Don says their life has been consumed by harassment from people online who
All right, the reason I stopped it there is because we all know what Don says about being harassed and stalked online, or not stalked, but, I guess stalked in a way, because there's people like, JLR that are literally stalking them, and others that I've heard maybe were. But we all know that they're going to say they had to move away and all this because of people online, but that doesn't make any sense because they are online. It doesn't matter where you move to, people are going to find you, especially when you're online putting it all on Front Street. So that doesn't even make sense. So I just stopped it. Don told NewsNation, all right, I had to make sure I wasn't muted. Don told NewsNation that since Summer's disappearance, they've been taunted by people on social media, and the harassment got so bad they had to move to Arkansas, like I was saying. But they're still here on YouTube and keeping it all the same. So I was under the impression that when Don was on Crime Crazy and Critters over there on the farm, that he moved because they were staying in that hotel down there because he was down there for work, and then they just decided to stay down there. So I don't know. Then he also says that they moved down there because they're trying to work with CPS down there to get their boys back. So what is it? And I heard that from Mary that Don said that they already lost their rights to their boys, but I don't know if that's true. Maybe it was a culmination of reasons why they moved. Maybe it was a culmination of reasons why they moved down there, and they've just told us all the reasons separately. But to me, I feel like they moved down there because Don had work down there and he wanted to take it, because that's what it sure seemed like. So anyways, Sheriff Ronnie Lawson told NewsNation that there's nothing pointing to abduction and nothing pointing to foul play other than Summer walking away from the house and not being found. So is this the fact that she wasn't ever found? The fact that she wasn't ever found, is that what makes it foul play? Because that doesn't really make sense unless he's saying he suspects foul play due to the fact that she wasn't found and there was nothing leading to abduction. Or he could be saying here that Don and Candus's story of Summer walking away from the home and them not being able to find her is suspicious of foul play. The story is suspicious. You know what I mean? It's one of those two things, in my opinion, because I don't know what else he could really mean by that. And let's not leave Grandma Candy Harer out. She was there June 15th when Summer allegedly just vanished, too. Yeah, she says on the news that she was taking a nap. They had that on NewsNation, too. That came in shortly after that, after the last clip that we just watched. And then Chris McDonough speaks on WJHL over the phone, and he says, not WJHL, on NewsNation over the phone, and he says he thinks that there is something going on, that Sheriff Ronnie Lawson feels he needs to say something, just not yet. Chris thinks the case is heading for some type of revelation. He mentions that 5-year-olds don't just vanish from their basements, and might I add, they don't just vanish from their yards either. Chris talks about the victim risk continuum and says the risk is very low for stranger abduction for Summer on that hill. This tells Ellie that if there was an abductor, the person was known to the area or from the area or the home itself. Chris says when he was there 2 years ago, he went inside and noticed right away this was no kind of living condition for a 5-year-old at all. He says in his career in law enforcement, he has seen that many times before. He wondered if something could have happened going down the stairwell because Summer was said to have went down there that day, and he says it was dark and moldy in terms of mist. There was disheveled beds in there on both sides, and that gave him a good idea of what these children were facing. And that may have had something to do with why CPS was there before Summer's disappearance. Chris says he felt Candus was telling some things from her heart, but he didn't think she was being 100 with him. That's the same thing the behavioral panel and Dr. Phil said, too. And pretty much everyone on the internet following Summer's case, and in my opinion, it seems to be what law enforcement thinks, too, based on some things I've heard them say. Everybody thinks Candus is leaving some things out. Like Ronnie Lawson saying Candus needs to work on her timeline because there's allegedly 3 hours missing, and that they're not always cooperating, things like that. And that they won't classify cooperation at this time. Don Wells said on Ernie Shell's channel on Predator Hunter Nation at the time, I don't know if he has a channel anymore, I don't know, I don't pay attention to Ernie Shell, but it seemed like he was having some mental health struggles, so I'm not going to talk crap about him. But I think that it was interesting, some of the things they talked about. Major trigger warning if you listen to any of that. But Ernie was talking to Don, and they were talking about the timeline. Ernie was saying something about people questioning the legitimacy of the timeline. Don said, well, the thing is, TBI told me to take some time, go home and sit down with Candus and work on the timeline. Don says because Candus was so broken up over everything that happened with Summer going missing that she left some important details out of the timeline in that 3-hour period of time that everyone is questioning, directly leading up to 911 being called. I even wonder about the time prior to 3 p.m., like what was really going on between 12 and 3 p.m. on June 15th. Because law enforcement never released any footage of Summer being anywhere as a last seen photo or video for people to reference, which maybe that wouldn't be such a common thing to do as I think it would be, but I figured if they had all this footage of Summer at all these places Candus says they were at, they would share some of that with the public in hopes of locating her, or maybe someone seeing her out and about at one of these places, maybe asking if anybody did that, if they saw anything outside the norm that day, to call TBI if they saw Summer and anything outside the norm. But nothing like that was ever said. We don't get verification of any of that. We just get told that Summer was last seen in the early afternoon, and we're also told that Summer was last seen walking away from her home by a sibling. So was that in the early afternoon, or was that in the early afternoon referencing video footage that is verified to be on June 15th in the early afternoon? Is that what they're referencing? The milk jug video? Doubt it. They're probably referencing the swimming hole video. So when did the boys see Summer walking away from her home? What time? I mean, we all want to say it was around 3 just because of the milk jug video, but was it earlier? Maybe they didn't drop Hunter off right then. Maybe they went home first. Just an idea. Don says an investigator told them they need to sit down and rewrite the whole thing, the whole timeline. Rewrite it. Go over it. Don says it took him and Candus a week for Candus to calm down enough and for them to get enough sleep before they could come up with their corrected timeline, because whatever they initially told police was obviously unacceptable. Regardless of how the Wells were treated about it, how each agency handled it, I don't know. Don seems to have a dislike for Hawkins County, but I don't know. Like I said, we hear him say good things about TBI. I'm not sure. Maybe they present as understanding, but are they really? I mean, are they actually that, maybe they're more suspicious of Don and Candus than they lead them to believe. Who knows? It seems like Hawkins County is a little bit more blatantly skeptical, in my opinion, but I don't know. He also says he doesn't trust them. So regarding the revised timeline requested by agents on Summer's case, Don says he and Candus did it. They finally remembered it all and told the law. So I wonder what investigators think of the new timeline, because Hawkins County doesn't seem to be too impressed with it, even yet. Have they since revised it again? I think maybe they should. So what's with the timeline Candus tells all of us then? Because that doesn't make any sense, and Don is adamant that Candus is being 100% honest. Well, then why does the timeline that was revised and perfected by Don still not make sense? There's still a couple hours of time that are unaccounted for, and Candus should be able to do it herself if she was the only one that was home. Why does Candus not want us to know anything about that? Why does Grandma also not want to talk about it? Oh, she now claims to be asleep during that time. How convenient. Don says the law was really focused on him and Candus hard. They flipped their house upside down 7 or 8 times. Don says he was so sick of their house getting torn up and his tools being torn out of his truck, he just left his tools sitting out. He also mentions in the past that he felt so bad for the searchers because he saw them limping and everything else. What about Summer? I can't try this for very long because it's difficult and I don't recommend it, but when I imagine my child is missing and I think someone abducted them and I don't know who it could possibly be, I wouldn't feel bad for anyone but my missing child. And I would be grateful that the searchers were there and begging them not to leave, and the law enforcement, no matter how many times they turned my house upside down. Although if they were turning my house upside down because they thought that I did something and they kept returning and coming back, I would be angry and I would be protesting that and being like, you need to get out there and find your abductor. But no, Don's just mad that their stuff's getting messed up and those tools have to keep going in and out of his truck. Like, really? All right. So I think that's about everything that I wanted to talk about for now, and I appreciate you guys being here and always being here for Summer and going over some of the news clips and some of the things that have been said during her 2-year missing mark on June 15th, 2023. Again, I really appreciate you guys, and thanks for hanging out and chatting.
Away, Appalachian princess, too beautiful to say, Appalachian princess. Say, Appalachian princess, but you got run away, Appalachian princess. We will find a way to get you out of this mess. Can't shut me up, I will be here fighting. Can't brush me off, we're thunder and lightning. She goes, we follow, not scared of no hollow. We want you to stay Appalachian princess, but you got gone away, Appalachian princess. We will figure out a way to get you out of this mess. They thought they could hide our Appalachian princess, but we're here to find you, Appalachian princess. Can't look away, Appalachian princess. Too beautiful to stay, Appalachian princess. Can't shut me up, I will be here fighting. Can't brush me off with thunder and lightning. She goes, we follow, not scared of no hollow. We want you to stay Appalachian princess, but you got gone away, Appalachian princess. We'll figure out a way to get you out of this mess. They thought they could hire Appalachian princess, but we're here to find you, Appalachian princess. Can't look away, Appalachian princess. Too beautiful to stay, Appalachian princess. Appalachian princess.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate you guys. Don't forget to send some prayers up for Summer Moon Utah Wells, that she will be rescued safely and one day tell her own story if she wants to. Love you, Summer. Keep your crown on straight, stand your ground, be kind.